everyone, and welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, the first tutorial of 2024, we are going to be making a small tote bag that is so cute, has the most useful pockets, and could quickly become your everyday bag. Today, we are making the Roadie, and this comes to us from K.Dill Handmade. Now, this little tote is so cute. My straps are all twisted. Let me even them out. First, we have two strap handles, and so it is a tote. It's not a crossbody bag or anything like that. There is an option if you'd like to add a crossbody, you can. On the front of the bag, we have a slip pocket on one side, and then a smaller slip pocket on the other side. Behind the larger slip pocket, you have a zip pocket as well. And look at that lining. Isn't that so pretty? I love that pop-up pink. Then on the back, you have a cute little side zip pocket that goes like all the way in. So you could actually fit quite a bit of stuff in there. Looking at the top, we have a beautiful recessed zipper. Opening that up, we have so many more pockets. Okay, so on one side of the lining, we have a slip pocket that also has pen pockets, optional. Most of these pockets are optional. The only one that in the lining is not optional is this zip pocket right here, because you will turn the bag out through that. So you have a beautiful zip pocket in the lining, and then there's also this little like holder here. It's like a drink holder. So if you have like a can of soda, bottle of water, you can stick it in there and it keeps it in place so it doesn't flop around inside your bag, which I think is just the best idea ever. So not only is this bag absolutely adorable, this is also the kit for January's bag making bee club mystery box. This has been such a fun mystery box to be a part of. Every month we think up a great pattern and some great material that would really be great for you guys in that month. So looking at January, we were looking at a lot of like simple, clean lines, black and white. You know, January is a lot of cleansing, things like that. So we went black and white, but at the same time, you know, I mean, I'm involved. So we had to get a pop of pink in there. I think that this bag is fantastic. Also, one of my favorite things about this is the material that is being used. It's all nylon, different types of nylon. And nylon is wonderful material for bag makers because it is easy to work with, easy to sew. However, it's durable and easy to keep clean like a vinyl, but much easier to layer up without breaking a needle. And so we're going to be using bonded nylon for the exterior and some regular nylon for the lining, and overall it's just amazing. It's just amazing. So thank you so much to K.Dill Handmade for allowing me to do a tutorial over this bag. I am so excited to do more patterns from them. They are so stinking cute. Thank you also to the Bag Making Bee Club for sponsoring today's video. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, other patterns from K.Dill that you'd like to see, other patterns you might want to see in the Bag Making Bee Club box, leave it all down in the comments section below. We're always looking through those. And if you're interested in signing up for the Bag Making Bee box and seeing what kind of fun stuff we have coming up, I'll have a link down below. It's gonna be so good. We've been planning out the next few months and they are so good. All right guys, let's get started. Okay, so for this bag, you're gonna need a half a yard of your exterior material and then about a quarter yard of your accent material. For both of those pieces, I'll be using a bonded nylon. So this is a nice swishy, easy to keep clean material that has like a bit of a fuzzy backing on it. It's very easy to sew over, great for beginners. And then for the lining, we will be using a nylon as well, except this one is not bonded, and you're gonna need about a half a yard of that. So not a whole lot of hardware here. I'm gonna have two straps because this is just going to be a basic like tote, little mini tote. So I have two pieces of webbing for my straps. I have four zippers, one which is 13 inches, two that are 8 inches, and then another one that is 6.5 inches. All these are number 5 zippers. Then I have 4 zipper pulls to go with that. I have a couple bag tags to add a little bit of bling, and then I'll be using 5 rivets today, one for each handle and then one for the front pocket. All right, here's most of the other stuff I'll be using today. A bunch of clover clips as always. You might want to use some Beacon 3-in-1 glue, just if you're going to be using some sort of firmer stabilizer that you want to glue down. This is completely optional though. For the top thread, the thread going through the needle, I'll be using a Tex 45 weight thread, and then the bobbin, I'll be using a Mara 100 weight thread. My needle of choice today is a Microtex 8012 needle. I have a lighter for cleaning up any little loose threads. I have some 1/8 of an inch wide, easy to sew over, not super sticky, double-sided tape. And then I also have some washi tape to just hold pieces in place while I'm moving it from my table to my sewing machine. I have 3 marking tools, a vinyl marking tool, an air erasing marking tool, and a chalk marking tool. This really just depends on the color of material I'm using, so I like to have options. I have my turning tool to poke out corners safely. My little wooden stiletto here is what I keep by my sewing machine with me at all times, and then I have a seam ripper stiletto combo as well. So going through the pattern pieces, you're going to have 2 cuts of your exterior main fabric for pattern piece A. This is your main body panel, and then 2 cuts of your accent from pattern piece B, and this is for the bottom accent. Next we have pattern piece C. This can be any material you want. I'm just choosing a lining one. This is for the slip pocket back, and then pattern piece D is your accent material, and this is the slip pocket front accent. From pattern piece E, you're going to have 1 cut of lining and 1 cut of exterior, and from pattern piece F, you're also going to have 1 cut of lining and 1 cut of exterior. These are going to be your zip pocket top and your zip pocket bottom. And then from pattern piece G, it's going to be a lining cut, and it's going to be the zip pocket back lining. Pattern piece H is going to be your zipper tab, so you're going to have 4 cuts of that, any material you'd like. Pattern piece I is going to be the full pocket lining. You're going to have 2 cuts of this. Pattern piece J is going to be the interior facing. This is going to go along the top of the inside of the bag. You're going to need 2 cuts of your exterior material for that. And pattern piece K is your interior main panel. You're going to need 2 cuts for that. Pattern piece L is optional, but it's for that little water bottle holder on the inside of the bag. So if you want to reduce bulk, you can just skip this. But it is a pretty quick, easy, simple feature that I think will be fun to use. I'm going to use 2 cuts of material, a cut of lining and a cut of my accent material. That's pretty much just what I had the most of to cut these pieces. But again, if you want to skip this, you can. Pattern piece M is going to be your interior slip pocket. You're going to have 2 cuts for that. And finally, we have pattern pieces N, which are 2 zip pockets for the interior, for the lining. Pattern pieces O, which are 4 cuts of your exterior material. This is going to be for the recessed zipper facing. Pattern piece P is the recessed zipper end tab. And then finally, I have a cut of Decovil Heavy. This is optional. It's not in the B box this month, but if you have any sort of foam, fusible fleece even, Decovil Light, Decovil Heavy, any sort of small cut of material, this is going to be for the base of the bag. Again, it is optional. You don't have to add it at all. But if you want that to have that flat bottom at all times, then a little bit of stabilizer is going to help with that. So the first thing we're going to do is make that recessed zipper. So grab all 4 cuts of your O, grab your 13-inch zipper, a zipper pull. Some double-sided tape is going to be handy here as well. And on the wrong side of each of your recessed zippers, on one of the short edges, mark a line that is 1/2 inch in from the right edge. So if you just flip all these over, all 4 of them, on just the right edge, if you have a directional print and it matters to you, on the right edge, you're going to mark a line that is 1/2 inch in. Now once that's in, we're going to grab a little piece of double-sided tape. And we're going to add the double-sided tape just towards the right of that marked line, so closer to the raw edge. Do this for all 4 of them, and then take the paper off the back of that tape and fold the raw edge back wrong sides together to meet that marked line. So you're just folding it back 1/4 inch. Make sure you stick it to the tape. If you're worried about that tape not holding, you can always add a couple clips to these as well. They won't really get in the way. We'll be able to move them out of the way as we're sewing. So repeat this for the other 3 zipper facings. Okay, you can set those to the side. Now let's work on the zipper. So with one end of your zippers, this is going to be the open end, you're going to separate the teeth and you're going to fold the zipper back on itself. So to do that, what you can do is you're going to pinch the outer edge of the zipper tape so that the zipper comes wrong sides together, and you'll see that as you pinch this, the coils just kind of naturally turn up and away from the center of the zipper. Let it do that, and I like to match up the raw edges on the top here that are all fraying with the side of my zipper tape. So just match it up so it all lines up like that. And then, depending on the type of zipper tape you're using, you can actually grab a lighter and melt down these edges. Careful not to burn yourself, it does get hot. And as it melts, it will seal itself on the side here. And it holds itself just like that. So I'm going to repeat that on the other side. So you can see now the ends are curved off just like that. If you'd also like to go to the sewing machine, or if instead of using the lighter you want to go to the sewing machine and just top stitch right along the edge at about 1/8 inch seam allowance to hold these down, that's an option as well. I'll go do that as well as the melting just to show you how it's done. All right, once you have those ends tacked down however you like, you're going to separate your zipper teeth entirely just like that. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking, but you'll be fine. Now, grab one of your zipper facings and lay it right side up so that the folded edge is over on the right. I'm going to measure in 1/2 inch from the left raw edge and just make a small mark on the bottom edge right there. So then I'm going to grab one of my zipper tape and I want to lay it right side down. So it's right side down. The teeth are facing the bottom. You can see the back side of your fold over here. The folded edge is on the left. The raw edge is on the bottom. The teeth are on the top. And we're going to lay this so it's right side down against our zipper facing right side up. Match up the curved end over here with that 1/2 inch mark. And if you'd like to use double-sided tape here, you can do that. It might be a little bit easier for you to make sure nothing moves around. But I'm just going to use clips, and I'm going to clip this in place along the entire bottom edge here. And again, nothing over here on the left, open end. And I'm going to clip this all the way to the very end where the fold over is. And now I'm going to grab another zipper facing and laying it right side up. Now I'm going to work on the top edge of this one. So this one is prepped. We can set that to the side for just a moment. I'm going to measure 1/2 inch in from the left raw edge on the top long edge this time and make a mark. And then I'm going to grab the remaining piece of zipper and I'm going to lay it right side down. So I'm looking at the back side of the zipper tape here. Curved edge on the left, and that's going to match up with that 1/2 inch mark. The raw edge of the tape is going to line up with the top raw edge of my material, and I'm just going to clip this in place. Okay, so I'm going to quickly take both of these to the sewing machine, and I'm going to baste along both of these long edges where the zipper is at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. All right, once those are basted in place, I'm going to grab another one of my zipper facing panels here, and I'm going to lay it right side down. Folded edge is on the right side down on top of my zipper, so the zipper sandwiched between these two panels. And I'm just going to clip these panels right sides together. And I'm focusing on the short edges and also the edge where the zipper tape is. So do this for both. Grab your other remaining panel, lay it right side down, always keeping the folded over edges on the same side. And again, we're worried about the short edges and the long edge where the zipper tape is. All right, now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're only going to sew on the short raw edge, so the two short raw edges that are not folded over, and the long edges where the zipper tape is at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. You're not sewing down the folded over short edge, and you're not sewing along the long edges that don't have zippers. All right, once those are sewn, if you have any zipper overhanging like I do, just trim that down, and then make sure you take a lighter to that edge. Zippers fray a lot, and so if you burn them and melt them, then they don't. And then we're going to trim down the corner on the short raw edge, and then also on the corner by the zipper. Go ahead and repeat this for both of them. And trimming the corners down will just help reduce bulk. Now you're going to take your zipper panel and flip it so it's right side out. This is where that turning tool comes in handy, because you want to get this corner here where the zipper is as poked out as possible. So just gently use some sort of a turning tool to poke it out. Don't suggest anything too sharp and pointy because it will just rip right through the seam. And if you find that it's just really bulky, flip it back out and trim it down some more. Maybe you have to trim into your zipper that's overhanging a little bit. That's okay. Just again, if you trim zipper tape, just try to melt down the edges a bit. And then flip it back out. You will have to sew over this corner, so you don't want anything that's going to break a needle. So get it as thin as possible without, damaging your zipper. And once you have that corner the way you like it, go ahead and roll out the short edge over here seam. And then I like to go to the other side here where the short edges are folded in and bring them wrong sides together, match up the corners. There we go. And then you can just give it a little tug. And depending on your material, you can iron this if you'd like. If you're using like a quilt cotton or a water-resistant canvas, you can definitely go ahead and iron this to flatten it out really nicely. Or you can just kind of tug on this like I'm doing with the nylon. And you'll notice that by the zipper it doesn't look great, but that's okay. We'll get it there. So just like that. And when you flip this over so it's right side up, you can see you can kind of pull on your zipper tape and help flatten this out and smooth this out so it's nice and straight. I'm going to repeat that with the other zipper panel. Okay, now if you want to just double check, when they're both zippers right side up, they should line up just like this. So the tails are on the same ends, the folded edges, they come together. So when you got a zipper, whoop, it just zips on like that. So now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch along the short edges and also along the edge where the zipper tape is at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Be careful with these corners, they do get bulky. If you need to change your needle to a thicker needle, you can go ahead and do that. Alright, you can set these with the zipper pull to the side for now and we'll attach them later. So grab one of your 8-inch zippers and then your 4 zipper tab H pieces and a zipper pull. And if you haven't already, put the zipper pull on the 8-inch zipper. And then before we get started, I like to grab a lighter and just melt down the raw edges of your zipper tape so it doesn't get in your way. Now take one of your zipper tabs, lay it right side up, take your zipper right side up, and just take it so that the end of the zipper lines up with the short edge of the zipper tab. And if you want to use tape here along the short edge right here to hold that together, go ahead and do that. This isn't too tricky to just clip everything. So once you have that clip like that, take another zipper tab and lay it right side down on the top of the zipper. Again, short edge along the end, and just include this in the clips. So we're just sandwiching the ends of this zipper between the two zipper tabs, and the zipper tabs will be facing right sides together. So repeat this on the other side. And again, if you're worried about this slipping around at the machine, you can just double side tape each end of these, or you can base stitch on one side and then stitch on the other side. But this is pretty simple. So now we're gonna take this to a sewing machine and we're gonna sew along each of these short edges at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Do make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Once you have this sewn together, flip both the zipper tabs back wrong sides together, lining up the raw edges. You can add a clip there if you'd like to hold it in place. And then keeping this nice and taut, we're gonna go to the sewing machine. We're just gonna top stitch right along the zipper tabs at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now grab pieces E and F and your zipper, and we wanna mark the midpoint along our zipper. So just fold this in half, and you can use scissors to cut a little triangle if you'd like. If you do that though, just do make sure that you also melt it down where you cut with your lighter, because again, any cut part of zipper tape frays. So see, I just cut it like that. So I have this little triangle right there, and then I just boop it with my lighter. So I'm gonna do this for both sides of my zipper tape. So now grab exterior piece F and lay it right side up, and you're gonna mark the midpoint along the top edge of this piece. And then take your zipper and think about which way you want your zipper to open and close. So on the front of the bag, this is that little accent pocket. Do you want it to close and open to the left? Do you want it to close and open towards the right? Think about that now. I'm gonna go with the pattern and have it close towards the right. And so I'm gonna take my zipper and lay it right side down, right side together with my exterior piece here. I'm gonna match them up at their midpoint marks and clip there first, and then clip along this top edge. And now I'm gonna baste along this top edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And now grab your lining cut from your pattern piece F, and you're gonna lay that right side down. If you're using this nylon material, there's not really a right and wrong side. I feel like one side is a little bit softer, so I use that as the right side. But you're gonna lay it right side down, and you're gonna match it with the top edge of your exterior panel. So your zipper extends farther than the panels do, that's okay. Just lay this so that the panels match up and clip together. And now we're gonna sew along this edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have your pieces sewn together, you're going to flip your lining and your exterior so that they are wrong sides together. So I like to zip the zipper closed and then flip up the lining, give it a little press with my fingers, and then flip it down so that they're now wrong sides together. And then I grab clips, and I'm gonna match up the bottom corners first, and then kind of tug along the short edges here to pull it away from the zipper and clip right where it connects with the zipper. And again, depending on your material, this can be simple or not so simple. So if you're using quilt cotton, you can iron this. Otherwise, you're gonna wanna just finger press this. And with them wrong sides together, we're going to top stitch right along this edge by the zipper at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so that's the bottom panel. So now let's repeat that for the top panel. So grab your top panel exterior, smooth that zipper out of the way. And we're gonna lay this right side down along the top edge of the zipper. And then once again, match this up with the bottom edges of pattern piece F. So you can mark midpoints if you'd like and use midpoints to match this up, or you can just line this up so that it's the same on the sides here. And then just clip it to that top edge of your zipper tape. And now I'm just gonna baste right along this top edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you have that basted on, flip this over so you're looking at the wrong side of the zipper, and then grab your lining piece for your panel E and lay it right side down. Once again, matching it up with the edges of the exterior E panel piece. So looking from the top, I just find those corners and get those clipped together first, and then just clip along this top edge. And now let's sew along this top clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. And then just like we did on the bottom, I'm gonna just finger press the lining and the exterior up and away from the zipper. And then keeping them wrong sides together, I'll use clips to clip them at their corners. And then also along the raw edge here. By clipping along these raw edges, it just makes it easier for you to kind of tug at this at the sewing machine and get it nice and flat and straight. This is useful if you're not using quilt cotton. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and just kind of pull along this to flatten it out. And I'm going to top stitch right along this top edge here at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance right above the zipper. Okay, once these are attached, you can trim down your zipper tab on the side. Now take your zip pocket back lining pattern piece G and lay it right side up. And then take your unit here with your zipper and keeping the zipper right side up. You're just going to lay it right on top. And it should line up pretty perfectly. As long as you got your seam allowances right, you should be good. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to clip these together, lining up all 4 raw edges. And I always like to work on the corners first, and then do the long and short edges. Okay, so if you're looking at the front, it should look just like this. On the back, it should be just like that. So now we're going to go to the sewing machine and just baste along all 4 edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So once you have that basted in place, grab pattern piece D, that little accent pocket panel, and let's move the zipper out of the way. And you're going to lay it so that the edges that are the same height match up. So pattern piece D looks like a square, but it's not. So make sure that the short edge of pattern piece D matches up with the short edge of your pocket. And you're going to lay them right sides together and just clip along this matching edge here. And now we're going to sew along this edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the top and the bottom. Okay, now flip that out and you can just finger press or iron this depending on the material you're using. Obviously if it's cork or vinyl or even nylon, I wouldn't iron it. I would just finger press it. And do not top stitch this yet. We will top stitch it later. So now grab your pattern piece C and you're going to lay it right side down over your whole little unit you've been working on here. And now I'm just going to add clips along this top edge over here. All right, once you have that clipped, go ahead and sew along this top edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once that's stitched in place, I'm going to finger press along that edge. And we're going to flip the lining and the exterior so it's wrong sides together. This gets bulky right here. So if you want to trim that down just a tiny bit, you can. I think I'm just going to pull some of it away and just trim down this corner. It just gets very bulky right where all those things connect in the middle. So I'm going to flip these wrong sides together and roll out that top seam and just flatten out this top edge as best I can. And then you can pull down the corners of the lining and your front panel so that those match up. All right, once you have that top edge, I know I have clips everywhere, but I'm really just focused on that top folded edge here. Once you have that nice and flat and straight, we're going to top stitch along that edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so before we move on, I'm going to add this little decorative tag here. I was trying to decide where to put it, but I think this time I'm actually going to add it. I'm going to flip the lining out of the way. I'm going to add it right over here, close to the zipper. So not in the top stitching area where I will be top stitching here later, and I'll add a rivet over here. So just to the right of my zipper, I think that's where I'm going to add it. That's a cute little spot for it. So I'm going to grab some double-sided tape to tape it in place. Here we go. And once it's taped down, I'm going to take it to the sewing machine. I'm just going to top stitch along all 4 edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, I'm not top stitching through the lining. That's out of the way. All right, that's cute. I like that. I think that's going to look good in the end. Next up, you're going to grab one of your main outer panel piece A's and lay it right side up. And you're just going to take your little slip pocket zipper thing here, and you're going to lay it right side up and line it up with the sides and the bottom edges. Okay, now I'm going to baste along the sides and the bottom at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I'm also going to top stitch right over this divide here on the contrasting side at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. I just realized I forgot to show the rivet press and everything in the beginning of the video, but we'll be using a rivet press if you're using rivets. I'll be using my giant one today. And because this is a double slip pocket, we do want to add a little bit of reinforcement right here. So without punching into any of the top stitching or causing a headache or anything like that, just mark a dot that's on the top corner of the accent panel, and then use your hole punch and punch through all the layers there. And then grab one of your rivets and just pop it through that hole and snap together. And then I've got my rivet press, and I'm just going to insert this in and press this down, which is the quickest thing ever. So now this is nice and secured, and I can use these pockets and pull on them and put stuff in them, and I don't have to worry about the stitching ripping out here. So now with your front main panel right side up, grab one of your bottom accent panels, pattern piece B, and lay it right side down along the bottom edge of your main panel and clip together. And now let's sew along this clipped edge. Add a 1/4 inch seam allowance to make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have that stitched in place, you're going to fold the bottom panel down. And just like I've been doing, I'm just going to finger press along this edge. And then we're going to top stitch along the bottom panel right at that seam at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, now if you haven't already, mark the midpoint along the top edge of this exterior main panel. And I'm going to add my bag tag now, and then I'll do the straps. So my bag tag is going to go on the center here. And we're going to measure 1 inch down from that top middle mark. I'm just going to use some double-sided tape and tape this in place. All right, and once you have that taped in place, let's just top stitch around all 4 edges at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, now let's add one of the straps. So grab one of your straps and measure 3 inches in from the sides. So 3 inches in from the left, 3 inches in from the right. I just made little marks here. You probably can't see them, but they're there. And then we're going to take our webbing, and having our webbing overextend by 1 inch, you're going to line up the outer edge of the webbing with that mark. And before you attach your webbing, you can grab a ruler and just mark 3/4 of an inch from the raw edge. So I'm going to do it just like this. And I'm just marking right along the edges. You can do a whole straight line though too if you'd like. It will not be seen in the end. And on my main panel, I marked in ticks that are 3 inches in from the sides. So right here and right here, hard to see, but they're right along the top edge. And then I'm going to take my webbing and lay it down. And the outer edge of my webbing is going to line up with one of those tick marks on the left over here. And then I'm lining up my 3/4 of an inch marks on my webbing with the top edge of the material. So you want your webbing to overhang by 3/4 of an inch. So keeping your strap nice and straight, rotate it up. And repeat this on the other side with the outer edge, this time on the right side, lining up with that tick mark on the right side, and clipping this in place. So once again, it overhangs by 3/4 of an inch. And now let's just go stitch this down at about an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And webbing is very similar to zipper tape. It likes to fray. So I'm just going to burn down the raw edges of the webbing, just like that. Isn't this looking cute? Such a cute bag. Okay, and the last prep work is to box your bottom corners here. So you're gonna mark little 1.5 inch boxes on the bottom corners of the bottom panel, and then using your scissors, just cut those out. And there you go. Your front main panel is now all prepped and ready to go. It's got a lot going on, but it's super cute. You can set this to the side. Okay, so you're gonna need your other main panel A, and you're gonna need your panel I's, which are your lining panels. And to prep, I'm gonna grab one of my lining eye panels and lay it wrong side up, or just back side up. And then on the wrong side, I'm not sure if you can see this, but you're going to measure 2.5 inches from the right side on the back side of your lining panel. And you're going to draw a vertical line, and then draw another vertical line that's 1/2 inch to the left of that, so you have 1/2 inch spacing between these. And then you're going to draw a horizontal line 1 inch down from the top, 1 inch up from the bottom. So you should have a nice little rectangle here that's 1/2 inch wide. And now grab your back panel piece A and lay it right side up. Take that lining piece with the rectangle and lay it right side down, so these two pieces are right sides together. And I am going to add some clips to hold them together so they don't start twisting and turning on me. And now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine, and oh, you can't see, can you? But right here, I'm just going to stitch along this rectangle box that we just made. So making sure my needle always lands in the corners along all 4 corners of this rectangle. All right, so once you have that stitched in place, you're gonna draw a line going right along the center lengthwise all the way down, and then draw some triangles along the corners here. This is a basic like zipper pocket panel that we do all the time on the channel. And then you're gonna take a seam ripper, and you're going to just rip in the very center along that line just to get it started. And then grab your scissors, and you're going to cut along that middle line until you get to the tip of your triangle, and then you're going to follow the diagonals of the triangle down to meet the corners of your stitching, and you're going to cut right up until you get to this stitching, but you're not going to cut the thread. Don't cut the stitching. Just get your scissors to like almost touch it. The closer you get, the better it's going to look. So now we're going to flip this. So the lining is going to go through that opening, and then the extra and the lining will be wrong sides together. And I'm going to give you some tips for how to get this nice and flat. If you're using material like this, if you're using a material that's not easy to iron and hold in place. So you can see that they're wrong sides together, But I really need this to be as flat as possible because I'm going to just stitch it over my zipper. So to do that, I'm going to flip this over and I'm just going to kind of push along the seam of one of the long edges here. And I'm going to grab a piece of double-sided tape. And I'm going to run the tape right along this little flap of the seam, okay? And I'm going to have it overextend just a bit. And by doing that, the tape's actually going to hold it down. Now, I'm using a very thin double-sided tape. If you were using a 1/4 inch double-sided tape, you could actually run it along the edge here so that the whole edge is held down right where you want it. But even if you're using 1/8 of an inch, it still works. So I've got my double-sided tape holding down the seam against the back of the main panel. I'm going to remove the paper, and then I'm going to grab the lining. I'm going to roll this out so it's as flat and straight as possible, and I'm just going to push it onto that tape. There we go. And now that's going to hold it nice and flat. I'm going to repeat this with the other long edge over here, so just flipping the lining out of the way and then tugging along this to flatten it out as best I can. And then I'm going to take my tape, extend it beyond the short bit, and then tape right over the seam, extending on both sides. There we go. And then take the paper off, pull the lining back, and rotate this and roll it so that it's nice and straight and flat. There we go. So now when I look at the front, it's a much more flat rectangle. Is it perfect? No. Will it be perfect? With me making it? No. But with practice, you can get this looking pretty good, but I'm happy with that. So now grab your 6.5 inch long zipper with the pull already attached, and you're going to just make sure you melt down those raw edges. And now on this zipper tape, you definitely do want to add double-sided tape. So we're going to add double-sided tape along the outer edges on the long sides of both sides of our zipper tape. And now lay your zipper so that when it closes, it's going up. So it closes towards the top. And what you're going to do is you're just going to lay the opening of your panel here right on top of the zipper, just like that. So to keep it the way we want it, let's get this nice and flat. I'm just going to do one side at a time. So I'm going to take the left paper off the zipper tape. I'm going to rotate this a little bit just because it's easier for me, because I want to look at the sides here and make sure that the sides extend about the same amount over the top and bottom of this. And then I'm just centering the teeth in that opening and then pushing this down just like that. Flip it over and make sure it overextends a little bit on each side. Okay, good. And then flip it back over, flip up my material, push that zipper in through that hole, or the zipper pull, because you don't want to get stuck in the tape, and then flip this back down and then flatten out that rectangle. There we go. And now we have the zipper taped in place. And now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're just going to top stitch along all 4 edges of this opening at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I just realized I put my pocket on the opposite side than what the pattern suggests. Oops. So this is going to be on the back side on the left instead of on the right. That's still okay. It's okay. If you mess up, it's okay. Unless you want to flip it and then have the zipper go down, which I don't. I'm gonna do it the way I'm doing it. Okay, take your remaining full pocket lining pattern piece I and lay it right side up. And then take your back panel with the zipper attached and just lay it right side up, right on top of it, just like this. You might notice that your back panel is a little bit smaller than the lining panel. That's because when you do these types of zippers, it just kind of tucks it in like that. It's okay. It'll be okay. But do your best to line up all the raw edges together. So I always like to start at corners and then work along the long edges. All right, once you have this clipped in place, go ahead and base stitch around all 4 edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once that's basted in place, grab your pattern piece B, your last accent piece, which is the bottom, and lay it right side down along the bottom edge of your main back panel and clip in place. And now let's just sew along this edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have that stitched in place, you're just going to fold the base panel down and then just give it a good finger press or iron it depending on your material. And then we're just going to top stitch right along the base panel, right about that seam at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now let's find the top midpoint mark. So just fold this in half and mark the top midpoint on your back panel, and then grab your remaining strap, and just like we did on the front panel, you're going to measure in 3 inches in from each side and make a mark. And then on the one side of your strap, you're going to mark 3/4 of an inch down, and then line this up so that the outer edge of the strap meets up with that 3-inch mark, and that 3/4 of an inch line on the back meets up with the top raw edge of the back panel. Keep your strap straight as you twist it up. And again, match up the outer edge with that little mark, and make sure you have 3/4 of an inch overhanging the top. And if you like, you can grab your front panel and lay it down, and grab your back panel and just make sure that they match up. If you want to lay them wrong sides together, just want to make sure that they look right. This is not to make them exactly perfect. This is just to make sure you measured correctly, because it's a good. You know, you never know on the day. You could have measured in 2 inches on accident, and then you can catch it now like, whoa, that's way off. So just make sure they're lined up. Those look good. And now let's just go stitch down these straps at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once those straps are in place, now you can just cut out the bottom corners just like you did on the front panel, just 1.5 inch boxes on the 2 bottom corners of your panel. Okay, now grab your exterior back and your exterior front, and we're going to lay them right sides together. We're focused on the bottom right now, so just match up those cut out bottom corners and line up the bottom raw edge and clip together, right sides together. And now we're going to take this to sewing machine, and we're going to sew along this bottom clipped edge only at 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, now this part's a little tricky. If you're not using material you can press with an iron. What we want to do is you pretty much want to press this bottom seam open without top stitching it just yet. So to help with that, double-sided tape is a good option. So folding this back, I'm going to grab my double-sided tape, and I'm going to add it just right along the edge here, just along the bottom edge. And I'm going to add this to both sides. So flipping this over, I'll add it along the seam on the other side as well. And then let's flip this open so we're looking at the back side. Starting on one side, I'm going to remove the paper. And I'm going to press the seam open. And right now I'm just worried about the right side, and I'm sticking that in place. And depending on how thick your material is, it might not help that much. So you have a lot of options here. You could just leave it. But this is what I'm gonna do. Actually, it works pretty well. It worked really well with the nylon, but we want to be quick here. Okay, so with that seam pressed open, I'm gonna grab my little piece of Decoville Heavy here, and I'm gonna center it over that seam. Now I marked the midpoints on the short edges, so I'm lining up those midpoints with the seam here. Decoville Heavy is fusible, but I get kind of nervous about fusing too much with nylon. So I'm just going to tape this down, and I'm just eyeballing it to make sure I have the same amount on the short edges. And it doesn't have to be, you know, fused on all edges or anything like that. You just don't want to move. So with this taped down like that, I'm going to flip this over, and now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and from the right side here, we're going to top stitch along both edges of this seam, and that's going to hold the Decoville Heavy in place. We're going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on both sides. All right, so now that is stitched in place. We don't have to worry about it going anywhere. And now we can just finish up the exterior of the bag. So take your bag and pull it right sides together. Get those straps out of the way. We don't want to accidentally sew those into seams. And we're going to work on the sides first. So I like to line up the connection between the base and the top to make sure that looks right, and clip there. And then I'll go to the top corners and clip there. And then I'll just clip along the side. You shouldn't have trouble lining everything up here. So repeat this with the other side, and always making sure that the straps are not in there. It's very easy to accidentally sew them into the seam. Okay, now we're going to go to the sewing machine and sew along both of these sides at 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure we backstitch at the beginning and the end. Be careful because some of these seams are very thick, so you might want to up your needle. Also, pay attention to where that zipper is in here, and make sure it's not too close to a seam. All right, once you have the sides sewn, we're going to box the bottoms. So just take the corners of these box bottoms and pull them away from one another, and turn the seams so that they are facing each other. And just line up the side seam with the bottom seam. And use some clips to clip these together. And then do the same thing on the other side. And now sew along both of these box bottoms at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. I like to do 2 rows of stitching here, one at a 1/4 of an inch and one just outside of it as well. All right, your exterior is done. You can now just set this to the side and we'll work on the lining. Okay, so now let's work on the bottle sleeve, which is completely optional. It adds a little bit of bulk to the lining, but not a whole lot. So you can see if it's something you want to add. I'm going to grab both my pieces of material for the bottle sleeve. And like I said, I'm using a contrasting piece and a lining piece because that's what I had. And you're just going to take them and lay them right sides together. And then grab some clips and clip along the top and bottom edge, the long edges. And now we're going to sew along the top and bottom edges of this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Once you have those sewn together, you're just going to open one of the short edges and flip this right side out by just pushing the material through one of the short openings. And now if you are using material that irons well, you can go ahead and press this with an iron to get it nice and flat. But I'm going to just push out the seams and kind of roll them straight and use clips to hold the seam as straight and flat as I can get it. And then once you have this nice and flat, just take this to the sewing machine and just top stitch along both of the long edges at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now grab both of your main lining panels, patterns K, and then on the bottom of each one of these, you're going to mark those 1.5 inch box. And that's going to be for boxing the bottom later. After you have those boxes marked, just grab your scissors and cut them out. All right, so you can set one to the side while we work on the slip pocket. Now grab your 2 pattern piece M lining panels, and you're going to just take these and lay them right sides together. Again, if you're working with this nylon, is there a right side and a wrong side? I don't really think so. So just lay these right sides together and clip around all 4 edges. All right, and then on the bottom edge over here, just mark yourself a 3 inch opening that's centered on that bottom edge. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along all 4 edges at a 1/4 inch seam allowance except between these 2 marks, that 3 inch opening right there. Start at one end, go all the way around, and then stop at the other mark. And make sure you back stitch at both of these marks. Once you have that sewn, grab some scissors and let's just cut down these corners. You're just cutting them at about a 45-degree angle. Cut kind of close to the stitching, but not too close because, you know, this material can fray and you don't want it to open up. So just a little close. Once you have that done, you're going to flip this so it's right side out. And then take your turning tool and just carefully and gently poke out those corners. All right, now with the opening on the bottom, roll out and flatten out that top seam. Now if you're using quill cotton, you can just iron this and get the whole thing nice and flat. Since I'm using this nylon, it's a little bit harder to do, so I'm just going to work on one side at a time. So I know that my sides are kind of bowing in, the bottom's bowing in. That's okay. I'm only concerned about this top, long, fully sewn edge. So I'm just going to straighten that out, flatten it out, clip it to try to keep it the way I want it. And then I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch along this top clipped edge only at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I do back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, now if you're using a nylon, you can grab those clips and roll out the side seams to get those nice and flat. And then on the bottom, I just put my fingers in that hole right there and just kind of give it a tug. And depending on your material, it can be more cooperative or less cooperative, but just grab some clips to hold it in place. You could also use a small piece of double-sided tape and just lay it on the inside of that seam to help hold it shut to get it the way you want it. Remember, this is a lining pocket, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to mark the midpoint on the bottom edge of this little pocket here on the right side. So make sure you're using some sort of fabric marker for that. Then using the midpoint on the bottom of that pocket and the midpoint on the bottom of your lining panel, measure 2 inches up from the bottom of the lining panel. And I'm just going to tape this down. If you're using quill cotton, you can pin it down. I will tell you that washi tape and nylon material don't work very well together. So this is kind of a funny struggle, but I just need it to be there for a moment. And then I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and what I'm going to do is just top stitch along the sides and the bottom at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do back stitch up here at the beginning and the end. And I'm just trying to keep this in place because nothing wants to hold it down. All right, so neither of us are going to discuss the levelness of this pocket. Just let it go, okay? Just let it go. Sometimes you just you pick your battles here. It's a lining pocket. We're not gonna talk about it. Now, once you have this top stitch in place on the sides and the bottom and it's nice and secure, you're going to do your pin pockets. This is optional. If you don't want to use pin pockets, you don't have to, but it is a really cute feature. So we marked in 1 1/4 inch from the edge and then 2 1/4 inches from the edge, drew vertical lines here. And now we're just gonna top stitch along both of these vertical lines. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end, so the top and the bottom of each one of these. Okay, once you have your pocket done and you're happy with it. For those of you guys who are using this material and you want to know what I should have done to keep it straight, I should have added double-sided tape to the back. So I should have added double-sided tape to the sides at least. Just doing it there would have been fine, but if you did it around the sides and the bottom, just a thin piece of double-sided tape right along the edge on the back side of this, and then use your ruler to set this in place and stuck it in place, that would have been best. Double-sided tape works really well with the nylon. The washi tape just doesn't work at all. And as you can see, as I started sewing, I ended up pushing it and shifting it. It's not surprising at all to me that I did that. Again, I'm okay with it, but if you want it to be more precise, the double-sided tape would be good. If you're using quilt cotton, pins are really gonna be the best thing to use. So now we're gonna take our lining panel with the pocket, and then we're gonna take our zipper panel, and there's 2 panels, so you want the zipper panel that when the curved edge is over here on the right and the zipper is right side up, it looks just like this. So the tail's here on the left, the curved edge is on the right, and it's all right side up. Now I have my midpoint marked on the top of my lining panel, but I also need to mark the midpoint along the raw edge here of my zipper panel. So I'm just gonna fold this in half, and we're not counting the tail, we're just counting the material. And then I like to use scissors to just clip right on that corner so I can see it easily. And then we're going to lay the zipper panel right side up, lining right side up, all like that, and then match up those midpoint marks and clip together. And then just clip this to the top edge of your lining panel. Now we can go base this in place at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Now grab one of your interior facing pieces and you're going to lay it right side down along this top edge of your lining where you put that zipper panel. Make sure this zipper end here doesn't work its way up there, so just keep it down. And then use your clips and clip these right sides together. And now we're going to sew along this clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I do like to back stitch at the beginning and the end. Once that's stitched on, just press this top panel up and away, and so the seam is going to be behind the top panel, and then we're just going to top stitch right along the top panel at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. All right, this lining side is now done. You can set it to the side. So now grab your remaining main lining panel, and then grab your 2 interior zip pocket panels. These are panel piece ends. Using one of these end panel pieces on the wrong side, you're gonna draw a horizontal line that is 1 inch down, and then a second horizontal line that is 1/2 inch down from that, and then draw 2 vertical lines that are each 1 inch in from the side. So we're creating this little inner rectangle right here that's 1 inch down from the top. Then grab your main lining panel, and with your main lining panel right side up, and make sure you have midpoints marked on the top edge of both these panels, you're going to lay this zipper pocket panel right side down, 1 inch from the top edge and centered. Okay, so I have that in place, and you can see these are actually just little tiny pieces of double-sided tape, just because it's the only thing that really sticks really well with the nylon. So I just use that, and I will rip those off. I'm not gonna leave them like that. Now what we wanna do is we just want to stitch right over this inner rectangle right here. Make sure your needle lands in all 4 corners. And if you wanna use a smaller stitch length, like a 2mm stitch length, you can. So once you have your rectangle stitched in place, you're going to draw a horizontal line going down the center of that rectangle, and then draw your little slanted lines. These are going to go from the corner of the rectangle about 1/2 inch to 3/8 inch. I don't really measure it, just kind of eyeball it, but you don't want it too close to the edge. So you want to extend these slants from the corner down to that midpoint line on both sides, so you have these little triangles. And then grab your seam ripper and start just cutting along that center line in the very middle. And then once you get it started, you can grab your scissors and continue cutting along that line until you get to the very tip of that triangle. And then you're just going to cut off on the slanted lines towards the corners. And you're getting as close as you can to that stitching without cutting the stitching. Okay, so now take your pocket piece and push it through that hole. So we're taking our material and putting it wrong sides together. And just like I did with the other pocket like this, I'm gonna use double-sided tape to help hold it in place. So you can see I'm still using that 1/8 inch wide double-sided tape, which I do really like. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work on this top seam right here. I know this is upside down, but I'm pulling the seam down so it's towards the top of the lining panel, just like that. And then I start the tape a little bit off the edge, and that kind of holds it in place. And then I just run it along this long edge here until I get to the other side and have the tape run over that edge as well. And then take this small flap here from the pocket panel and push this down. Just press it down. Make sure you're paying attention to that seam as well. You want to make sure this is nice and straight. Again, don't beat yourself up about it if it's not, because this is a lining pocket. It's not that noticeable. All right, so I'm going to repeat that on the other side. So I'm going to flip up the bigger end of the pocket panel, and then I'm going to push the seam down. And I'm going to take my tape, and I'm going to have it overextend one side a little bit, and then just add it right on that seam so it's below the stitching. And then extend it past that a little bit as well. And then I'll pull this bigger piece down, kind of roll it out, and tape it in place. There we go. And so when I flip this over, I have a nice clean little rectangle there. Looks pretty good to me. Okay, now grab your zipper, and you're gonna add double-sided tape along both long edges of your zipper tape, right along the edge, so not too close to the teeth. You don't want this to be seen in the end. Okay, so take your zipper and lay it right side up, and when the zipper closes, I like it to close towards the left. And so I'm going to remove the paper from the top edge of my zipper tape, and then taking my lining panel right side up, I'm just going to lay this over it so that the teeth are centered in that rectangle. And I'm also going to pay attention to the sides here and make sure that the zipper is overhanging equally on both sides. And then I'm just going to tape this in place. And if you have to move it around and adjust it, you can do that. There we go. And now pull that zipper pull up through the opening, just like that, so it's out of the way. And then flip your panels up and away from the zipper. Remove the tape on the bottom edge of your zipper tape. And then flip this back down and flatten it out really nice. And like I said, if you need to adjust it, you can. The goal is to have the zipper teeth centered in this window. All right, once that's in place, we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're just going to top stitch along all 4 edges of this window at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once that's top stitched in place, take your lining panel and lay it wrong side up. So we're looking at the back of the zipper. Grab your remaining zipper pocket panel, and you're going to just lay it right side down over the back of that zipper. And then just line it up with the 4 edges of the other pocket panel. It might not be the same size because these things do tend to shrink when you make a pocket like that. So if it's not, that's okay. Just clip it together as best as possible. Okay, so I clipped the sides and the top, but the bottom we're actually going to leave unclipped because we're not going to sew there. So we're going to turn everything out through this bottom later. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take these 2 bottom edges. You can see mine don't line up because, again, things shrunk. I'm just going to flip both of those raw edges up by about 1/2 inch just so I can see both of them. And I'm going to flip them up, and I am going to add a couple clips just to hold them like that, but this is going to make closing this in the end easier. So I'm just flipping them up like this so that both edges are flipped one way, just like that. Now we're going to flip this over. So we're looking at the right side of the lining, flip it around, and starting at the bottom here, you're going to stitch at about 1/4 inch seam allowance up the side, over the top edge, and down the other side, making sure you back stitch really well down here on these bottom edges, and keep the material flipped like it is. All right, your pocket is done. Now grab your remaining zipper panel and make sure you mark the midpoint along the long raw edge. And when this zipper panel is right side up, so the zipper teeth are right side up, the curve should be over here on the left, the tail should be on the right. With your lining panel right side up, match these up along their midpoints and clip together so they're both right sides up. And let's just go based along this edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now, using this main lining panel and your little optional bottle holder piece, we're going to measure 1 inch up from the top of this bottom right box corner. And I'm just going to mark one small line right along the edge of the material. It'll stay in the seam. And then just fold this however you want it so that it's right side out. So I'm going to have the accent be right side out. I'm going to add a couple clips to hold this in place. And then we're going to clip this so that the raw edges match up with the raw edges on the right side over here. And you can put this on either side. You can put it on this side or this side. The pattern suggests if you're going to be using a taller bottle instead of like a 12-ounce can, if it's going to be a taller bottle, put it over here on the side where the zipper is open. But remember, this is not a huge bag, so I don't think you're going to be putting your Stanley Cup in this. Now we're going to take this and we're just going to base this down at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now let's grab the interior facing piece, your last one, and you're going to lay this right side down along the top edge of your lining and just clip in place. And now let's sew along this top clipped edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, and now just finger press that top panel up and away, and the seam should be behind the top panel. And now we're going to go and top stitch right along that seam on the top panel side at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now we just have to put the lining pieces together. Before we do that, make sure you have midpoints marked on the top and the bottom of both lining pieces. I already have my bottoms marked, but I need to mark the top now that I have this accent piece up here. This is going to help whenever you're putting the bag together in the end with the exterior. Now take both your lining panels and lay them right sides together, and just do a double check here that when you do that, the zippers have the tails on the same side and the folded over edge on the same side. Just make sure if you made a mistake, you catch it now. And what we're going to do is we're going to line up the sides and the bottom and clip them together. Now you see my zippers hanging out over here. We don't want that. We're going to just tuck that in out of the way. And we're going to add some clips along the sides of our lining panels. I like to make sure that the seam between the top piece and the main body piece of the linings match up, and then I match up the corners and the edges. All right, now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and at the top of this, we're going to be sewing at 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to start over here on the right. I'm going to start at 1/4 inch seam allowance, and as I get below this top piece here, I'm going to increase it to a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then continue that 3/8 inch seam allowance along the bottom edge, and then also on the side over here. And then once I get closer to that seam right here on the left, I'm going to decrease it down to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the top and over on the box corners as well. All right, once that's sewn together, let's just box these corners. So pull the material away from each other, and you're going to line up the bottom seam and the side seams together. I like to press the seams open with my fingers. I don't press the seam open along the entire seams, just where they connect right here. I find it makes it a little bit easier to sew over. But if you prefer to just flip them in opposite directions, go ahead and do that, whatever you're comfortable with. So I'm going to clip along that boxed edge just like that. And I'm going to repeat this with the other box corner. And now we're going to sew along these two short edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end each time. All right, now we have the exterior and the lining done. We have to put it together, but let's do a little bit of prep work to try to prevent headaches later. These seams are going to get bulky, especially at the top here, and when you top stitch that, you're not going to be happy. So let's trim down these seams. So I'm just cutting off little angles here. I'm probably going down about 1/2 inch from the top edge and just shaving down these corners. Now the lining's not a big deal, but we have quite a bit of bulk over here on the exterior. So we're going to just carefully shave that down. And that will help a bit. There'll still be some thicker seams, so if you want to up your needle now to like a 90-14 or a jeans needle, I do suggest you do that because depending on the material you're using, it can get pretty thick. So take your exterior and flip it so it's right side out. And then take your lining so it's wrong side out. So I want you to think about this, how you want your zipper to close. We haven't attached the zipper pull on this yet, but if you want your zipper to close towards the left, then you're going to want to line it up so that the back pocket here, also make sure you unzip this lining zipper pocket. So with that unzipped lining zipper pocket on the back side here, you're going to insert the exterior so the back panel of the exterior is right sides together with that zipper pocket. And that will make sure that this bag closes with the zipper closing towards the left. So as we insert this so that the exterior is inside the lining, the two are right sides together, make sure you take your straps and push those between the two panels. So just take your time here to set everything up. Make sure you have your midpoints marked on the top edge of all 4 of your panels. So your 2 lining panels and your 2 exterior panels. It's going to make this easier. And then I'm going to match up the midpoint marks on the back panels, so the back lining and the back exterior, and add a couple clips to hold that in place. And then I'm going to rotate this and do the same thing with the 2 front panels, so the lining front panel and the exterior front panel. And then I'm going to go over here to the side, and I'm going to match up the seams on the side over here And since I kind of shaved mine down, there's not going to be any like opening of the seam or twisting it in any way. I'm just going to clip these seams together. And you might find that you have to really shove the exterior in there, which you should because the lining is like smaller. So you should have to kind of push the exterior down in here. So once you have your midpoints and your seams all clipped together, just go section by section, just kind of straightening it out. Don't let it stay curved. And then add clips. So straighten it out. Make sure you have your strap bit overhanging. And just clip along this top edge here. All right, once you have it all clipped, we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and sew along this edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can lay it like this and then sew from the inside if you prefer, or if you have a sewing machine that has like an arm and it has a bed, you can take the bed off and then just kind of wrap this around the arm and sew it. That's my preferred way to do this, so that's what I'm gonna do. Alrighty, so that should have been okay. If your material's really thick or you just have some areas that are really thick, you can go over those areas again with another row of stitching just outside, a little bit closer to the raw edge, just to make sure you don't have any pulling. But I think the nylon we're doing okay. So we're gonna open up the opening in our zipper pocket. Make sure your zipper is open, and you're going to pull your bag through that opening. And just be gentle here and take your time. All right, this looks so cute, doesn't it? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, this looks so good. So I'm gonna tuck in everything, all the lining, the pocket, and everything like that, because I like to top stitch first. Now remember, when you pulled this out originally, you kind of were like, oh, this is the top of the bag. That's not the top of the bag. You gotta tuck in that zipper panel. And when you do that, feel that seam right there. You feel that? That can be pretty thick, so you need to be careful with that when we're sewing. So if you didn't trim it down, you might want to go ahead and trim it down a little bit, but I have another tip for you that helps with that. So pull your straps out and then roll out this seam. And if you get kind of confused, it's the seam where the straps are coming out of. That's the top of the bag. So just kind of tuck it in and take your time going around, rolling out this top seam and straightening it out. And I like to use clips to keep it where I want it. Okay, so I have that all smoothed out. Now, if you are worried about these seams and you're like, that is just so thick, especially on these corners right here, I'm worried about my needle. Again, I do suggest you use a thicker needle for this, but what you can do is instead of top stitching at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, you can top stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You're probably not going to catch all those layers of material, but they'll still be tucked in. The 1/4 inch seam allowance is a little tricky because you're more likely to have kind of wobbly seams. So that's why I suggest using a variegated thread because it's less noticeable. If you want to try the 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, go for it. But I do prefer to use a 1/4 inch top stitching seam allowance around this top edge just to make sure I don't have any issues with those corner seams. So once again, I'm going to slide this over the arm of my sewing machine and just top stitch around the entire top edge at an 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch seam allowance, whichever you prefer. Alrighty, that's looking so cute, isn't it? Oh, I love it, I love it. Okay, so now let's close up the lining and then we'll finish up the zipper and then we're done. So pull out that pocket from that zipper pocket and you should just have to kind of push your fingers in along the sides here and pull them apart. And the material is just gonna naturally fold in on itself because since we folded it like that, which is a really cool trick. So I'm just gonna fold this in and then making sure that the raw edges are tucked in and folded. I'm going to add some clips along this opening over here to hold it in place. If you have a fun little woven label that you want to put in here, now is a great time to do it. And once you have that clipped in place, we're just going to top stitch along this clipped edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Once you have that stitched, just tuck in that pocket, get it in there nice and tight. Zip up that pocket, get everything straightened out in the lining. Oh, that looks so cute. We have our little bottle holder here. You can put like a little can of soda in there. Oh my goodness, that's so cute. All right, let's finish up the zipper. So pull out the zipper tape and your zipper panel. And I like to start at the rounded edge over here, get it all lined up. And then just keeping the zipper tape lined up, I'm gonna go all the way to the edge to make sure the edges match up. And they do, and when I do that, it looks like the right coil kind of lays on top of the left one, so I'm going to make sure I keep that in mind. So I'm going to grab my zipper pull, and I'm going to insert the right side first, and I know that it's fraying like crazy. Just ignore that for now. And then I'm going to insert the left side, and then looking from the top, I'm going to make sure that the right coil is on top of the left coil. It doesn't have to be super precise, but I like that. Okay, so that looks good. So that way when I pull the zipper on, it should come to the end of both sides. So if you kind of stagger this too much, you'll notice when you put your zipper on that this doesn't line up over here. So just take your zipper off and redo it. As long as it looks good and you're happy with it, you're fine. All right, so now let's deal with this zipper over here. First, I'm gonna trim off a bunch of this gunk over here. And then I'm gonna grab my lighter and I'm gonna melt down the edge of this. Don't let it catch on fire. I'm gonna melt down the edge of that so that it's all nice and tucked in. All right, and if you have like a metal zipper end, you can definitely add one of those. That's the easiest way to do it. You just kind of wrap it around, put the metal thing on, screw it in place, and you're done. But we're gonna be using a fabric zipper end. So grab your little zipper end fabric piece and lay it wrong side up. And I marked 1/2 inch in from all 4 edges, just for a visual. And then I'm gonna grab some double-sided tape and I'm going to go along the long edges, adding my double-sided tape just below the marked line. I'm gonna do this for both long edges, and then remove the paper and fold the long raw edge back, wrong sides together to meet that 1/2 inch marked line. So do this for both long edges. And honestly, there's lots of different ways to do zipper ends with materials, so if you have a different way you like to do it, go ahead and do that way. There we go. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the short edges, so adding a little piece of double-sided tape right below that marked line on both short edge sides. And then remove that paper and fold this back, wrong sides together. I know it gets a little bulky on those corners, so if you wanna trim anything down, you can. I'm just gonna leave it. All right, so now what you're gonna do pretty much is just fold this again so that you only have right sides out, and you're gonna wrap it around the end of your zipper tape and stitch it in place. So if you wanna make it a little bit easier, you can add some more tape, which is what I like to do because things are hard enough, guys. So I'm gonna add a little piece of tape, kind of diagonally like this on each side, just like that. So I'll remove the paper, and then folding this in half, just kind of nom it right over the edge like that, and then roll it so that both top and bottom folded edges match up. There we go. So the bottom is stuck in place. Now I'm going to take the paper off the other piece of tape so that I can stick the top in place. And of course, make sure you do this with the zipper pull on. If you didn't put the zipper pull on yet, you need to do that. So then I'll grab some clips as well to hold this down. And now I'm just going to take this to the sewing machine and top stitch along all 4 edges at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. All right, there we go. And if you want, you can keep it laying out, or you can tuck it in like that. How stinking cute is this little bag? Oh my goodness, look at the other side. We have this. Okay, last thing is a few rivets, and then we're done. Okay, so I have 4 rivets left. The pattern suggests you use 2 rivets on each strap, but since I've got 4, we're gonna just do 1 on each strap. This is optional, but it is a little bit of extra reinforcement for straps because this is gonna get the brunt. Right here is gonna get a lot of tension, and we don't want anything to rip. So I think I'm gonna actually measure down 1/2 inch from the top edge of my bag, centering this over my strap. And I'm gonna use a marking tool to mark a dot. And that's where I'm gonna put my rivets. So 1/2 inch down, centered on the straps, on all 4 straps. I'm just marking with my silver pen right now. And if you need to, go ahead and feel and make sure that that webbing is gonna be caught. Remember, the webbing is 3/4 inch overhang, so it should definitely catch. So I'm gonna grab a hole punch, and I'm just gonna punch out those holes. And I am punching through the lining, the exterior, and the webbing, all of the layers. And I can take my rivets and just insert those. I love the color of these. They're like blackish gunmetal-ish. They're not totally black, but they're pretty black. Yeah, they're black. But like the back of them is a kind of a gunmetal color. They're really pretty. Remember, all this material, everything we're using today comes from Wonderground Fabric. So if you're interested in buying any of this amazing stuff, you can find it over there. Okay, I know I've shown you guys a few different rivet presses today. You don't need this many rivet presses. But the pink rivet press that I was using earlier is being used for something else right now. So I'm just going to use my, I call this a handheld rivet press. It's called a tabletop because you can like mount it to a table and then just push it down like this. But I think it's good in my hands. So I'm gonna use this, and I'm just going to press all these rivets in place. And like I said, you don't need this handheld one if you have issues with, you know, forcing things with your hands. Definitely use the bigger one that you push down like that. Alrighty, there she is. How stinking cute is this bag? Oh my goodness. I'll tell you what, when my daughter saw this, she right away was like, that's mine. So you know it's a winner if Mila claims it immediately. That is such a cute bag. I hope you guys love making this, and if you guys use the bee box, I really, really hope you love the materials and how this all came together in the tag, because it's so cute. Alright, what do you guys think? How did you feel working with the nylon? Isn't the nylon great? I love nylon. It is like secret sauce to me. That is just how I feel about it. It's so easy to wipe down. It doesn't stretch. It doesn't really fray. I mean, especially the bonded nylon. It's just perfect for bags. It's perfect for bags, and it's perfect for sewers who work on a domestic machine. Because I know if you work on an industrial machine, you can layer up all those layers of vinyl, and it's nothing. But for us domestic machine sewers, we can't really do that. And so nylon is like our great alternative where we don't have to use quilt cotton. We can still use a easy to keep clean, heavy duty material that's not heavy duty on our machines. So I hope you love making this bag as much as I do. I could envision so many other versions of this. I want one for fall, I want one for summer, I want some clear vinyl on this front pocket over here. There is just so many ideas I have with this pattern, so I'm excited to play with it some more. Like I said, if there's any other patterns from K.Dill Handmade you'd like to see on the channel, leave them down below. This is the first time we've worked with one of their patterns. I love it. The pattern is written beautifully. It is easy for beginners to navigate. There are break points where it's like, hey, now you're good, let's go take a break. I love that when patterns do that, because sometimes you get kind of involved in this and you burn yourself out. So it's nice when a pattern's like, hey, this is a good time to just stop and go take a break. I appreciate that. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for watching today's tutorial. I hope that you are inspired to go make something and have a lot of fun with these patterns. If you're not already subscribed, please make sure you click subscribe down below. Also, make sure you hit that little bell, the little notification bell. That's gonna make sure you're notified every single time we have a new video or when we go live. For even more fun content from OklaRoots, make sure you're following us on Facebook and Instagram. We do daily stories over there, which include unboxing, talks about books, other little mini tutorials, lots and lots of discussion over all kinds of things going on. You can also find us on TikTok and also on Reels for even more fun, kind of more random content. And if you really want to dive in for some behind the scenes content, free gifts, access to shop items before anybody else, and influence on upcoming videos, make sure you go check out OklaRoots over on Patreon. We have a lot going on over there, and it's a fun place to hang out, and you are directly supporting the OklaRoots YouTube channel. These videos could not be possible without the help of my patrons. So thank you so much to everybody over there. Thank you again for watching today's tutorial. I hope you enjoy the videos. Go make something.